Aloha and welcome to Ask a Holistic Dietitian with Andrea. And today I'm going to be talking about how you can determine how many calories that you need to eat per day. So this was a question that was posed to me in the Facebook group, which is got the same name, Ask a Holistic Dietitian with Andrea. You can find us on Facebook and join. So if you have a question that you want answered by a dietitian with a holistic mindset, then ask away and I'll do my best to answer questions as fast as possible. Today's topic is calculating energy needs. There's a variety of things that can affect how much energy a person needs: your age, your gender, your weight, your height, the amount of physical activity you do or don't do. Any kind of illness or medical conditions can alter the amount of energy needs. And this is a topic that can get rather complex, and it's part of the reason why dietitians are needed in the real world. Today we're going to be discussing energy needs as it relates to healthy people. If you have an illness or medical condition, I would speak with a medical professional, either a doctor or a dietitian, if you want to get a better understanding of your energy needs. And then muscle mass versus fat mass can alter your energy needs too. And this is part of metabolism, where people that have a higher percentage of muscle than adipose tissue, it can raise the amount of energy that they burn just because the muscle is using more energy than the fat would. This is a simplified version of how you would calculate your estimated calorie needs. We're taking resting metabolic rate plus your activity level, which can also be considered the thermic effect of physical activity, or TEPA, so the amount of heat, the thermic effect. And then you're adding the thermic effect of food. So this is the amount of energy that your body needs to digest food. There's a lot of different formulas for this, and I tried to find a very simple one that anybody with a very basic level of math should be able to do. And then the weight is going to be measured in kilograms. So this is a male in his 40s. He's 5'10", 168 pounds. He describes himself as a person who works on a computer 12 hours a day, pretty much zero movement. But his BMI is 24.1, which is considered normal. And the reason why I wanted to calculate his BMI, just so that we get an idea of if we're trying to maintain weight, gain weight, lose weight. And then also, if you get on the extreme ends of the BMI, you might want to use a different formula, because if somebody has a lot of fat versus muscle, if they're extremely obese, or if they're a super lean athlete, it could alter. But for today's purpose, we're going to use a normal BMI. And the first step is we're going to convert from pounds to kilograms. He's 168 pounds. We're going to divide that by 2.2 to get how many kilograms he is, which is about 76 kilograms. The resting energy expenditure, this is the amount of energy that he's using at rest. And we're looking 30 to 60 years old, 11.6 times weight plus 879. When we do the calculation with his weight being 76.3 kilograms, we get 1,764 kilocalories. So next we need to calculate the activity factor. If you look at the different levels of activity, you'll see that the men and women, it's very similar, but it's slightly different. And the more active they get, the more the difference comes between the two of them. So somebody that's sedentary, this is a very minimal amount of activities. You're playing cards, watching TV, maybe reading, sitting around most of the time. Light active, this is probably a lot of people that, students, office workers, professionals. We're guessing they're sleeping about 8 hours, and then the other 16 hours they're sitting or standing. And we're including about 3 hours of light activity, such as walking, laundry, golf, or ping pong. 1 hour moderate activity. Then the moderately active, people that have very active jobs, electricians, carpenters, or if somebody has a lightly active job, but then they're exercising 1.5 to 2 hours a day of a moderate intensity, like say maybe they're jogging 5 or 6 miles a day. And then very active, we've got the full-time athletes, laborers, agricultural workers, army recruits, soldiers, moderate intense activity most of the workday, or somebody that's exercising comparable to running 9 to 13 miles a day. And then the extremely active, and they're talking to a moderate to high level physical activity most days of the week, or an exercise comparable to running 14 to 17 miles a day. Back to our example, he describes his activity as a person who works on a computer 12 hours a day, pretty much zero movement. So he's probably pretty sedentary, but I do know this person. I know he's got children and a dog, and that he does run sometimes. So I would say that we're going to say between sedentary and lightly active. And we're going to do this by taking an average. So if we add 3 plus 6 and divide it by 2, the average is going to be 0.45. So we take our original number, 1764, and then we multiply it times 1.45 to get 2,557.8 kilocalories. The other way you could do this is to take that number, times it by 0.45, and then add that number to 1764. It just takes out a step if you multiply it times 1.45. And then we're going to add the thermic effect of food, which is an additional 10% for the energy that the body's spending when it's digesting food. 10% of that is 255.78 kilocalories. We add that to our original number, and we end up with about 2,814 kilocalories per day. For those who aren't aware of the difference between a calorie and a kilocal, as we know it, the nutrition facts and what we think of a calorie is actually 1,000 calories. So that's why we call it a kilocal, which is abbreviated as KCAL. So when you hear of people saying calories, they're talking about kilocalories, just to make it clear. When your box of food says calories, they're referring to kilocalories. We've got this number, and the number we calculated is the approximate amount to maintain his weight. So if he wants to lose weight, then we're going to subtract 500 calories a day to get 2,314. And the reason why we got this number 500 is because there's 3,500 calories approximately in 1 pound of fat. If we divide that by 7 a week, we would get 500 calories a day that we would want a deficit of for him to lose 1 pound a week. And a recommended healthy weight loss is about 1 to 2 pounds a week. That's what we're aiming for. If we wanted to lose 2 pounds a week, then we would subtract 1,000 calories a day off this number, or we could also compensate by increasing the amount of physical activity to offset it. And of course, weight management is not just a science, but it's also an art form. And as I'll talk about in further videos, there are other things that come into play here besides just the sheer amount of calories. So our macronutrient breakdown is also referred to as the AMDR, acceptable macronutrient distribution range. And these numbers are pulled from the 2020 to 2025 dietary guidelines for Americans, which are fats are about 20 to 35% a day, protein 10 to 35%, and carbohydrates 45 to 65. You'll see different numbers floating around. The NIH, it's a little bit different. The fats and protein numbers are a little lower, carbohydrate a little bit higher. And Everybody's needs are going to be different, which is why it's called a range. But you want to get at least a minimum of each category if possible. The carbohydrates, that's a whole nother can of worms that we can get into in a different video. Our friend that has the 2,814 calorie per day, if we took 20 to 35%, that would give us 563 to 985 calories coming from fats or lipids. Now, if we want to know how many grams of fats we need, then we're going to take these numbers and we're going to divide them by 9, because there are 9 calories in 1 gram of fat. And if we want to find out how many grams of protein, we're going to divide that by 4. Same thing with the carbohydrates, because there's only 4 calories per gram in protein and carbohydrates. Somebody that's trying to lose weight and they're going to be going into a deficit of nutrient or energy, then they're going to want to go a little bit higher on the protein, because if the body wants more energy than it has, it can start breaking fat and protein down to use for fuel. And it's important that the body has enough amino acids and proteins to rebuild whatever muscle may get broken down in the process. And then, of course, you've heard of diets that are low carbohydrate, like the ketogenic or carnivore diet. And I'm not going to say that's a good diet or a bad diet, because it really comes down to the person, what their goals are, what their nutrition status is, and what they want to get out of it. But what I would say is that if you're going on a low carbohydrate diet, it's helpful just to make sure that you're working with a practitioner of some sort that can coach you through it and keep an eye on your labs, just to make sure that you're getting everything that you need from it. Our body actually doesn't need carbohydrates, because we can convert fats and proteins to energy, and we can make our own. The body can actually run off of the ketones that the body will make if there's not enough carbohydrates. However, that's generally takes a little bit of a transition, and a lot of people are not gonna follow the diet completely. And if you're not in ketosis and you're bumping in and out, it can play around with the metabolism and ultimately do more harm than not. So I would say, if you're going to do a diet like that, work with somebody, learn how to do it properly, and commit to it, because there are people that can get really great benefits out of those kinds of diets. But if you're not willing to do the work and really go 100% in, then eating a balanced diet, including a decent amount of carbohydrates, will probably be your best bet. I hope you enjoyed that and got something out of it. If you have a question, join our Facebook group. You can ask your own questions. You can also comment here. If you enjoyed the channel, please like and subscribe. And I will see you soon.